to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. It's Tom Dutta here, your host, and I'm excited. We're live streaming today, and well, what is live streaming? It's the next generation of broadcasting. We're actually across five platforms: LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. If you're there, get in the chat box, send us some messages. We might feature that on the screen. And hey, give the YouTube channel a rating, everybody. It allows us to do more of these and honor our guests. Epic interview that we're about to do. He's in the green room there, and I can see him. We were just talking about haircuts and things. Robert Riopel. I want to tell you a bit about him before I bring him on. He's an international best-selling author, an app designer. When I read the bio, I said a PP designer, but it's an app designer, entrepreneur, trainer. He spent 18 years traveling around the world. I'm in a good mood today. I'm not sure why. He's got high energy and heartfelt style. He draws on his journey from humble beginnings. I'm not going to get into his backstory, everybody, because as some of you read the intro, I challenged him big time to get into his gut punches, where his fingerprints are on all his setbacks, so we can learn from those as he got to his successes. And well, we'll bring him on now. He's a great guy. Robert Raymond Riopel, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tom, great to be here.
A PP designer.
I like that. I'm going to remember that one. A PP designer. I love it.
I'm so sorry. I can edit that out, but no, I won't. Hey,
no.
Amazing to have you on the show. You're where right now? In what part of the world?
I am in central Alberta right now as we speak. This is where I live.
All right. Well, for those, we have an international audience. That's Calgary, Alberta, right not far away from British Columbia, where I am. I think you're having a heat wave right now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, woke up to the -4 Celsius, and I used to live in Calgary, but actually a couple of years ago we moved back to central between Edmonton and Calgary. Beautiful little acreage area, and just enjoying life down here, or over here, or around here.
Yeah, fantastic. I'd like to make this educational too. Everybody, that's a teaching moment. Google Canada, find the map, Alberta, and take a look. It's a beautiful place. Robert, it wasn't long ago. I did a lot of traveling when I was in my other paid work, and spent a lot of time across what we call the prairies, or Alberta. A stark difference between the folks out there and the folks here in BC in terms of just lifestyle and family orientation. Really a great place to visit, everybody. Well, listen. So you've written a book called Success Left a Clue. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. I'm going to get you to hold it up in a while. But what fascinates about your story is you're a sought after speaker, and people call you and they say, come and talk to us about what you learned from that. You talk about Success Left a Clue. Let's start off and go deep. Tell us about your gut punches. Where did all this start? And you're in a place where, for whatever reason, you decided to make a shift and do what you're doing today. But take us way back.
Yeah.
You were born and
yeah, I was born, and at the age of 1. No. As you and I were discussing off air, I was actually born close to where you live now. I was born in White Rock, British Columbia, and for the first beginning of my life, because my family, very poor family, didn't know that we were the wrong side of the tracks, you could call it. And just to keep working, my parents moved around a lot just to provide for us. And, as kids, we never went without, but we never had access. We never knew we were poor because my parents were great at taking care of things. But because I'm a naturally shy person, and moving around a lot, I didn't know how long we were going to be anywhere.
Wait a minute. You said you're naturally shy?
I am. I know. And that's the funny part is people don't believe it, but they don't realize that I hide my shyness by being outgoing.
Yeah.
And I know that's something you can probably identify with, Tom, and so, especially because I didn't know how long I was going to be in any one location, I wanted to make friends quickly. I didn't want to be sitting there being that kid that no one knew and I didn't have any friends. And I did some pretty crazy stuff just to get friends. And so even like when we moved to Alberta for the first time, we're in this set of row houses, and there in between them, there's a nice big playground, lots of families. And I go out to the playground and all the kids are playing soccer. And I didn't know they played on leagues. I've never played soccer. And I'm watching them. I finally get the courage to say, "Hey, can I play?" And they looked at me and they went, "No." And
Wow.
I don't know. I know it
How
gut punch right there.
how old were you then when that
I
happened?
would say I was maybe 9.5 years old
Yeah,
when that happened.
that's a rejection is one of the things we fear the most. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I don't know why, but I turned around. And I said, "Well, then I'll play against all of you and I'll win." Now, let's just say the game didn't last very long, but it broke the ice. And this was actually the first place that we settled down for more than a year. And all of a sudden, some of the kids became my friends, and one actually my best friend.
Yeah.
And but it started with that because I hid that shyness by going, and I don't know why I did it, but it came out of my mouth before I even thought what I was saying.
Yeah.
And I tend to do silly things like that just to try to break the ice because it is hiding that shyness. And people go, "But Robert, you speak on stages all over the world. What do you mean you're shy?" And I'm like, "Put me in a room with people I don't know, and I'm the quiet guy watching from the corner.
Yeah.
Getting the lay of the land."
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for sharing that in the soccer store. I have a soccer store. I want to tell you, trade some stories here, but let me just say for a minute that we honor you there. It's really interesting because I see a lot of posts online from people about introvert and extrovert and whatnot. It's refreshing to hear somebody talk about it in a different way. We don't when we label people, it's harder. I look at the shyness through personality science that I've learned. I look at it as a motive. The motive of being shy is really, to me, the motive of just peace and harmony. Somebody who has a gift of being able to keep peace and harmony doesn't want to step out. I think about Michael Jackson. They called him meek and weird, right? But what happened when they put a mic in his hand and got out of his way? He was like you,
Oh,
dude. He was a master performer. My daughter's the same way. Uh, Now, your parents, you said they travel a lot. What did they do?
anything they could just to earn a living because the way we were raised is you do whatever you need to take care of your
Gotcha.
family. So
Yeah.
my dad started, he was driving truck. My mom was doing cleaning. Then, my dad would, he ended up when we moved to Kelowna, BC. So again,
Yeah.
in British Columbia, closer to you, he was working in a truck factory, helping build Western Star trucks. And then he was working for a house mover. So
Yeah.
this was our life of all these different things. And when we came to Alberta, he came to do sales and work with a cleaning company because we have the oil fields here. So all of a sudden he was now on the road traveling in central Alberta selling cleaning chemicals to all the big factories, all the big oil plants and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And that was where he got his first kind of long-term job because the economy back then was tough, like it is right now.
Yeah.
And so growing up, that was what I was taught. You find the job, whether you like it or not, you work hard, you stay loyal if it takes care of your family. And that's the mindset I grew up with. And when I started working at a young age, that's what I did. I started um, working in a car wash, then became a manager. Then they shut it down. I got laid off. And I'm only like 16 at the time, 17, I'm still in school. So then my dad helps get me a job at a factory doing fiberglass. And Tom, I don't know if you've ever worked with fiberglass, but I got to tell you, 3 o'clock in the morning, every morning, waking up itching because of the
Yep.
fibers that
Oh yeah.
sunk into right.
Yeah.
And because my dad helped me get that job, when all of a sudden a job I had applied for came open because a factory was about to be built here in Red Deer, Alberta, I wanted to go to the interview, but because I'm a very loyal person, it's like these guys gave me a job. I hate the job. It's, waking up, I'm not sleeping well, but I'm going to stay loyal because that's who I am. And I was upfront with my bosses. I said, look, I've been offered an interview. They're opening this factory. And they're like, look, go to the interview. If they want to hire you and they're willing to pay you more, we'll match it. We'd love to keep you. And I'm like, perfect. I went to the interview and I came back and they were paying me $6.75 an hour in this factory with no benefits. And because of and here's kind of a cool thing. When I went to the interview, the starting position in general labor in the factory was going to be $8 an hour. But because I'd been doing quality control in fiberglass, so even though I hated the job, the experience, they offered me a $10 an hour job in quality control if I wanted it at the factory with benefits. So even though it was a job that I didn't like, but I was loyal to it, and because I gave it everything, it helped me advance in life. And people don't realize sometimes when you go through the tough times, it allows you to have the good times.
Yeah.
And so I came back and I said, let me be honest. They're offering me $10 an hour plus benefits. And they said, Robert, we can't even touch that. So please take the job. And it's interesting because 3 weeks after I took the job, I would have been laid off anyway because they shut down the fiberglass shop.
Wow.
Uh,
They say God puts us in places at the right time, and a door closes,
yeah.
another opens, right? I did you have any brothers and sisters growing up?
I am the youngest of four. So I have my
All
sister's
right.
the oldest and then two brothers. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm going on journeys in my head here about your upbringing. So here we are at we went to age 9 and then 17, uh, and you moved around a lot. So there's you have this resilience. There's something that we either develop it or we're born with it. But a lot of children find difficulty adapting to moving and making new friends and starting new schools and whatnot. So it seems like you were able to make that adjustment despite being somebody who was somewhat shy. You stepped
Yeah.
out of your comfort zone, and I'm starting to get a sense on your hero's journey narrative, and I'll tell you later in the show and you can tell me if I got it right or not. The thing about it is that I'm starting to think about you that if you're with a dad, that if you're in a place where you just stay there your whole life until you're ready to leave home, you have a set of friends, you have a school. I know many people like that. But it seems to me that if you're moving around and going here to here to here and having to remake friends, adjust, it's almost like a gift. That's part of the gift I see, that you're able to, did that develop a strength in you to be able to step out of that shyness? And I can see now why getting on a stage and doing speaking and engaging with people, I can see now why maybe that's just something that you've built, that mental muscle. That's a gift that, I mean,
And
that's
I would agree. And because one of the things that people don't even realize is I deal with paralyzing self-doubt, like paralyzing. And because I have amazing people in my life, that's how I move forward.
so.
Because
What's the root of that? Where does that self doubt come from? Who told you something, or who planted that deep in you? Because that's not how you were born.
no, it's not. And when we moved to Red Deer, I remember being in school, and again, that kind of how do I make friends quickly? And I remember being in a class, and the teacher gets up front and of course goes, "Hey, everybody, we have a new student. He's moved here from BC. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself?" And because it was the first time I was being introduced to English and French in a class, I thought, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna say my name in French because I am French, but I've never been taught the language because my dad kind of disowned French when he moved away from the family." And so I said, my name is Robert, and so it is Roberta in French, and everybody laughed. And I didn't
Yeah,
even know that I had said it wrong. And all
yeah,
of a sudden, it was like that crushing,
yeah,
wow. I showed my vulnerability and I just got laughed at.
yeah.
And so being on stage in front of people all over the world, my biggest fear was, what if people laugh? And over the years, I've developed it to where, the greatest gift I believe, Tom, that anybody can give this planet is be themselves,
Yeah,
whatever that
absolutely.
looks like.
I
And
want to
so,
just you send me a journey. I want to just riff on that if
yeah,
that's okay. Because each time you hit a nerve or you hit a emotion, emotion is the pathway to change. When we're trying to look at, somebody says I have this issue I'm dealing with. A lot of times, right, Robert, it's not that issue. It's a deeper issue that's parallel. And
yeah.
when we go through digging, we find it's uncomfortable. And so when you said this thing about being criticized openly, and my heart goes out to you, but you become real, because so many people who are going to watch this are, many of them are going to say, that's my story. I had that moment, yet they won't talk about it because it's uncomfortable. You, now this is a tough part because we talk about our parents and I talk about mine openly. Some of that self-doubt sometimes comes from things that are said to us, or sometimes we have busy parents who can't make time for us. So we feel maybe it's because of me not being good enough. Was there anything in your early years that defined or gave you that sense of self-doubt that was from really within your home?
Well, yeah. Charity work.
Yeah.
Because we had to live on charity at some times. And when we started, where my parents had that regular job, we're now in Alberta. And one of the things, we were part of a cadet organizations here in Canada
Oh
at
yeah.
a young
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
I was in Navy League and then Sea Cadets, and we always did a lot of things like bottle drives.
Yeah.
And I've always been kind of a young entrepreneur. And I remember we'd be doing these bottle drives and I'd see the kind of stuff that was happening. And I'd be like, oh, this is brilliant. We're raising funds, we're helping out our core. And so one Saturday I decided to go out, and I'm going to go door to door, knocking on doors saying, hey, my name's Robert. I'm collecting bottles so I can have some extra spending money. So I was very honest about why I was collecting money. And, some people say, sorry, got none. I go, thank you for your time. Others would give me bottles. And by the time I was done, I had collected something like about $15, $20 in bottles. And I took them down, or I went to my dad and I said, Dad, can you help me? He says, what? I said, I collected these bottles and I need to go to the bottle depot so I can turn them in. And he's like, what do you mean you collected these bottles? And I'm like, well, I went door to door and I collected them. He said, why would you do that? I said, because, I want some extra spending money. And he lost it on me. He's like, we help others get charity. We don't do this for ourselves. And he made me give all the money away.
Wow.
And all of a sudden I internalized that, it's okay to help others, but it's not okay to help yourself. Yeah. And I didn't realize that until like years later, the impact it had on me.
Well, I want to jump in there. First of all, thanks for sharing that, man. And everybody, I challenge Robert to go deep and talk about both sides of the equation, success and happiness. And dude, you're stepping up here. So really proud of you for doing that. What I've learned through brain science, studying it, and you can tell me if you agree, is that up to about age 15, we don't have the use of the rational brain, which is the part that stops and analyzes our thoughts. And so everything that happens to us is said, done, we observe, buries into the neural nets. And what I didn't realize till later in life, and when I'm coaching, I do some coaching now with others, that there's these tracks, these things that play like records that are buried in us. Mm-hmm. So I have a personal thing that I struggle with, and it's yours. You said self-doubt. Mine, I don't know how to explain it other than I don't think I look very good. So when I look, I look in the video here now, and what I see coming back, my brain tries to tell me is something else. And that comes from growing up being called raghead Hindu by people in my community, but also within my home. I had a very rough childhood in my home, and the people that were supposed to nurture and care for me had certain names. So what I didn't realize is I was a self-worth chaser, man. I went out and I climbed the ladder and got higher positions and more stuff and CEO jobs. And but that hole in my soul never closed until probably 10 years ago when I started looking deep into what you just taught us. It's a teaching moment, everybody, that those moments of, I'll finish with this, I'll give it back to you. When I had my concussion a few years ago, I have a brain injury I've had to nurse back, as I mentioned to you. I learned that the emotions of shame and guilt are side by side in the brain. So if I miss your interview, I might feel guilty. And so there's a positive behavior. I'll call you, apologize, and redo it. But if I miss your interview and I think, man, I'm such a loser, and I go into shame, you go into a dark hole. And so that's really the thing that you've taught us there, is that there's certain things that are wired in us that can cause us to have self-doubt. And I'll just add this. I'm a faith-based man, so my wife and I do enjoy our faith on Sundays. And there's a really interesting thing I wanted you to comment on it. They said that I learned is that we're made to look for danger. We're built to look for unhappiness. So all our lives we search for joy and happiness. And so if you have a situation like you've just taught us about some self-doubt, even if you go into entrepreneurship or business, man, that sometimes people never make it to the summit of Everest because they can't get to the base camp. So let's get into something that you've done. You've written a book called Success Left Clues. Talk a bit about that. And there was something I read about you at age 32. Prior to that, you climbed a bit of a mountain yourself. Talk about this. Talk about this now. If you've got those, what I call tracks or self-doubts, whatever it is that rules your life, what are you going to do about it? And how did you go from that shy kid who moved around all the time and self-doubt to really faking it till you make it, I guess? How did you deal with all that? What did you do? Tell us about your book.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Thomas, because that which we need to learn the most we teach, and that's the reason I do the work I do now, is because I work with what you heard, experienced, and saw, and learned, saw, and experienced as a child growing up. And so when I started that factory I was working in, I'm very blessed that one of the greatest people in my life is my wife. We met when we were 13. We started dating when we were 16. We got married when we were 19. And we just celebrated our 32nd wedding anniversary this past June.
Congratulations, man.
And I have no problem telling people I would not be doing what I do today if it wasn't for her. Wow.
Little celebration for you and your amazing lady there.
Yeah. Because one of the gifts that she gives me is she will not let me play smaller than I am. And she holds me to that higher standard, even when I have the resistance because I don't see it. And so here I am, I'm working for this factory, and my goal was, and it sounds like similar to you, I pictured myself for 40 years working with this company to the point where I would be my own general manager in my own factory. So imagine my surprise when I walk into work on a Monday after a week off, and the general manager calls me in and he goes, I want to let you know we're shutting the factory down. You were laid off as of last Friday. And I was pissed because being lower management, I'd gone from working in the factory to helping run the shipping and receiving department to being inside sales. Because I was lower management, I was laid off instantly. Whereas the workers, they got to another 3 to 4 weeks before as the factory wound down. And in Alberta, with our oil, in 1989, we were in the middle of one of those oil busts that we never seem to go through here in Alberta. Yeah. Never happens. And so there was no real work. And I'm taught to go out and find a real job. But I couldn't find a real job. So I started doing something to take care of, because I'm still a newlywed. I started delivering pizzas for Domino's Pizza. And I'm the old guy at 21, Tom. I'm the old guy.
Wow.
All the other guys are 16, 17, 18. So I was able to actually make more money because they always wanted to party, and I could convince them to give me their shift for closing.
A true entrepreneur.
I know how to work hard. And from there, I became a manager. And a year and a half in, and my wife becomes my assistant because we've always worked together. She's my assistant manager. And we're working 7 days a week, open to close, when all of a sudden a year and a half in, we're qualified to be franchisees. And I don't know how much you know about Domino's Pizza. You cannot just buy a franchise.
Right.
You actually have to successfully manage a store for at least a year, meeting a bunch of criteria, and then you qualify. So we were qualified, but we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And our franchisee comes up and he says, I want you to know, I'm selling my 2 stores. I'm out of Domino's Pizza. And I went into fear mode because all of a sudden it was that self-doubt, like, oh my God, we got to go call the other franchisees. We got to find out, we're in Calgary at the time, which store needs a new manager. And my wife looks at me and she goes, why would we do that? Why don't we buy the store? And I look at her, I'm like, because we don't have any money. That's why we don't buy the store.
The voice of reason.
My wife, who's the youngest of 5, raised by a single mother. See, I was taught, here's the box, don't think outside the box.
Yeah.
Her teaching was, what box? And so we decided, well, let's see if you can buy a business without having money.
Yeah.
And we made a lot of mistakes. We started just talking to people, asking for loans, made a lot of mistakes, but we learned every time we made a mistake. Until about 4 months in, we knew what to say and what not to say. And we went to our own bank and we ended up getting, they ended up giving us 100% financing for both the stores my franchisee had for sale. And we became franchisees at that point. And it's almost like, oh, we've got it made. We're now business owners. And what was interesting though, and then you being a CEO, you understand this. And by the way, on your TEDx talk, I love the definition you gave of CEO, because that is so true. So true. And here we are. We knew how to run a store, but we didn't know how to run a business.
Yeah.
And a huge difference between the two. And for the first 2 years, we struggled. We were franchisees for a total of 9 years. And once we finally turned it around, we started making pretty good money. But both being kids from poor families, we wanted to keep up with the Joneses. We started spending more money than we were earning.
Yeah.
And at 8 years, we're now personally in debt over $150,000 and going down quickly. And that's when we were introduced to personal development. And I found my passion, my calling.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, we go to a 3-day training here in Red Deer, Alberta. We walk in $150,000 in debt, stressed out beyond belief. We learned why we were in debt. More importantly, we learned to take ownership of our debt, quit blaming others. And then we learned what to do to get out of it. 9 months later, putting into practice what we had learned, we actually went from being $150,000 in debt to being completely retired, financially free at the age of 32. And it was like,
how long?
Information.
Sorry, I just had this the question pop in my head. So from the time you were 150,000 in debt to the time you were financially free, and define what that meant to financially free. How much was it? What was the timeline in that?
9 months. 9
Wow.
months.
And what is
And
financially free? What does that mean?
yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because a lot of people think is, oh, you're wealthy.
Yeah,
No,
it's
the
not.
definition of financial freedom is when you have enough passive income that is greater than your expenses.
There you
So
go.
meaning if you don't want to work, you have enough to still pay it. So when my wife and I became financially free, we still had debt, we still had expenses, but we had learned about passive income, and we had two that had come to work for us that now we didn't have to work. And what it gave us was one of the greatest freedoms we could have, time freedom. We went
Yeah.
from 60, 70 hours a week just earning a living. Now we had all that time freed up. And when we took part of that time, we committed to 10 hours a week to create wealth. All of a sudden, not having the stress of having to make a living, not having the stress of all this debt, and having the time freedom, creating wealth became a lot easier
Yeah.
and more enjoyable. And so I always tell people, don't go for wealth. Go for financial freedom first. Once you've got that, then go for wealth if you want it.
Yeah.
But get the financial freedom first.
Amazing. Thanks for the amazing story so far. Everybody, the teaching moments, the 9 months from being in debt to financially free, and the definition of financial freedom you've just heard is it's not just about money. Was it the residual income that you created to achieve that? What was that from? Was that from, if I got that right, you bought the restaurants, or how was?
No,
Ah,
no. We were franchisees for 8 years by that
okay,
time, but and that was part of our debt. We weren't enjoying it anymore,
I
so
see.
we weren't spending as much time in stores. But we learned that passive income comes in two forms: money working for you or business working for
Yeah,
you. And because we'd never heard about it, never knew the concept, we didn't even know to look for passive income. We always thought you had to work for your money.
yeah.
And so when we started learning how to get our money working for us, we came across two internet-based passive incomes at the
Yeah,
time. And those two, with a little bit of investment in time, but investment in learning and energy, what I call that sweat equity.
yeah.
I'm huge about putting sweat equity into things. We were able to actually get a passive income coming in fairly quickly that replaced our income and was enough
I
to
see.
cover our expenses. Yeah. And
And
so at the
today,
time, it was two internet-based ones.
yeah. And then so today, what's your picture look like today? Is it does most of your income come from the work you're doing uh here? Because authors don't make a lot of money, as we know from their books, but they
Yeah,
monetize it. But what does that financial pie look like today? What's your sources?
yeah. Well, BC, before COVID, I call it. I was I was traveling on average 200,000 miles a year around the world doing live trainings, anywhere from 3 to 5 days up to 12 hours a day on stage,
That's a lot
100
of
to
travel.
6,000
Yeah,
gigs at a time, and still taking 6 months a year off. Actually, because I I like my time off, Tom, and I like to
of
have
course.
that balance because family's important.
Yeah,
It's not just about success. So that revenue, of course, COVID, all but wiped it out. So I've had to reinvent, and I do mostly virtual now. But I also have investments because I still have passive incomes. I like investing in real estate and things like that. I like being the bank for others, in real estate. So there's other investments we have going to keep our money working for us. But nowadays, financially, it's mainly me doing live events on virtual. I've right now I'm sitting in a reinvention. My wife and I, because of COVID, on the back we have a beautiful acreage here in Alberta. We actually had wanted to build a training center on our property,
yeah.
and it was going to be 6, 7 years down the road. Well, COVID sped that up because whenever we get um, life throws us a turn, we always have a choice: play the victim or use two powerful words: what's next?
Yep.
And when we got through the victim role, because picture this, March 10th, 2020, I was returning home to Canada from India. I just finished doing a powerful 3-day training. And March 11th, I got put into lockdown, and my world changed. All my live events canceled, hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue instantly gone out the door. And no, how long will it last? For the first 2 weeks, my mind made me sick because it's like, what's this COVID thing? And all of a sudden, I got these symptoms. Is that it? And I got myself even sicker.
Yeah,
And my wife, who refused to isolate me, she got sick. And we went through this mental stress for 2 weeks until we could finally get through to the health services, get an appointment, get the test, only to realize, no, you're negative, but look what our minds did to us. And that's what our minds do. And so when we started feeling better, we went, okay, what's next? And we decided to build our training center now instead of years down the road. And last month, I finally started moving into my office. And I've now got a 1,500 square foot training center on the other side of my wall. And because it was not only the what next, but then the fear of, okay, hundreds of thousands in revenue are gone. This is going to cost a few hundred thousand to build. What if we don't have the revenue to do it? And another thing that served my wife and I well is two more words: all in.
Yeah.
We said, you know what? We're all in on this.
No
And
dabbling.
because of that, that's right. That's exactly it. So now we're creating that when COVID, kind of quiets down, we'll be able to have students come to me instead of me traveling around the world. But in the meantime, that studio is going to become a super Zoom room. So I can, because when I do trainings, I can have still 5,000 students on a training virtually.
Yep.
So much has opened up that way.
Yep.
I don't have to travel to the country to do it. So I want to be able to see 300, 400, 500 students on screen while I'm teaching them, and make it where I'm not having to sit down. I can be standing up, being the energetic person I am.
Yeah.
So we're making those adjustments as we go along, because that's what I do today. Is I've been blessed to personally teach over 500,000 people in live trainings around the world how to take their life to another level.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know people are going to be able to check out the book. First of all, do you have the actual physical book with you? I know we have a poster on the wall behind you. Can you hold it up? I'm going to full screen you.
You
Just
mean
hold.
this
Tell
one?
us yeah. Tell us the title. Just say it out loud for those listening on audio.
Success Left a Clue: 6 Life-Changing Habits to Achieve Your Dreams while keeping it real. And I love that you used that word earlier, Tom. Relevant and repeatable. And if you notice, the 3 R's are like my initials. And so when I train people, it's all about keeping it real. I'm going to tell you the good. I'm going to tell you the bad.
Yeah.
Why? That's one of the many reasons I've been looking forward to talking to you, because not many people are willing to. It's all about, look at all the good stuff, yay! But it's like, no, you've got to understand the crap as well.
That's right. Well, I want to just first of all honor that, man, with a quick story that my brain goes on journeys every time you're talking. It bounces around. I have this ability to see 3-dimensional. I wrote down this acronym LSE. What was that again? The acronym LSE. There's something you were saying before.
Sure, it is. LSE.
Oh, now you can't remember.
I'm in the moment, man. I know when I'm in the moment, it just flows through me.
We'll put it in the show notes. But I usually write. People don't see that I write as you're talking. I fill up pages of notes for myself, and I draw a word association. So I had written down LSD. I'm thinking of drugs, but we'll come back to this. But one of the things I wanted to say is that you and I are so on the same wavelength. But everybody, it's true. And I'm just going to be transparent with you here. I did a TED Talk. Today's not about me, but you mentioned it. And CEOs stood for crack emotionally often. CEOs, when you're at the top, the pressure. And I grew up in a difficult childhood, but went into business really seeking to find that hole in my soul, that thing that was missing, which is really the love and appreciation of my dad, and being thinking enough of myself. They say if you wake up in the morning and you love yourself first, then you can go out and serve the world. And I never could do what you did until a while back. It's cool because it seems like your wife, you're the youngest of 4, she's the youngest of 5. You were taught to think in a box. She's challenged you to go outside the box. It reminds me of that movie with Michael Keaton, The McDonald's. And the interesting thing is
the founder.
Yeah, man, what I love about your story, that in that little moment, it's a teaching moment, everybody, come back and listen to it, remember in the movie, The Founder, he had all these ideas and he was going for it, but he was married to somebody who was sort of a stick in the mud. She wanted what I call certainty. And so they eventually divorced, and he eventually found somebody else who, it's a blessing, I think, that you have a partnership with your wife that allows you to go, man. What did you say? You said something, the don't think big, or be as big as I can be. It was your words, but that is awesome. And I think
she won't allow me to play smaller.
Small. And I think, here you are. And it's funny because I was going to say to you, I'm detail oriented, so I'm going to full screen you here. Just have some fun with your head. All right, everybody. So I'm looking at this thinking like, okay, he tells me he's living in his home. He's got a nice poster. It's like, why would you put a door there that looks like a hotel room door with a little key that has a slide? Are you strange or something? And I know you built that PP app, but technology is your thing. But I had that in my head, like, why does that door look funny than my door? But then you tell us about this training center and this thing. And this is what I get out of that, dude. It's the ability to pivot in your mind, the ability to make a choice that you, Robert, everybody was able to see the future when many people stuck in COVID are seeing the present. They're anxious, depressed, and they're not thinking. The brain has the power to shift to a positive thought. You're visualizing teaching through your Zoom room and you're building it now. Uh, I had this gone through similar experience with the work I do. COVID hit hard. We all had to pivot, but I know so many people, Robert, who are stuck. They are
Yeah.
stuck and they're down and out because that little mental muscle. And this is your hero's journey narrative. The hero's journey, everyone, is a narrative of my show. Joseph Campbell left us that research that we're all connected by a thread, but we go on this call to adventure to seek and find truth about ourselves and come back into the real world and do something different. Many hear the call, right, Robert, and they don't answer it. They just live on this
Yes.
treadmill of unhappiness. But you
Yep.
grew up as a shy boy, which we have to honor because there's nothing wrong with being shy. I think it's a gift.
Nope.
And then your dad moved and mom and dad moved around. So you had to up and move, which means you had to sit in a new lunchroom with somebody else, sit here and find new jobs. So you literally were forced to go out of your comfort zone to build that strength that you didn't necessarily have innately. And I believe that here we are again with another gut punch with COVID, and you
Yep.
stepped out of your comfort zone instead of being shy, and there you are building your virtual business. It's amazing. Tell us
Yeah.
about the book just quickly. It says
Yeah.
Success Left Clues. Are there what's in there? Why should people get it?
Well, and so the 6 steps, which are from me traveling around the world, I've identified what it is that separates successful people from non-successful. And so, like step number 3, taking action. In all the journeys around the world that I've done, Tom, the number one thing that separates successful people and non-successful people is unsuccessful people. They refuse to take action, or they come up with a reason not to. And so I wrote it down as a workbook, because most people, I did not write this book for people to read it, put it on the
Yeah.
shelf and make it shelf
Yeah.
help. I didn't write it for that. So I wrote it as a workbook where there's action steps all the way through. And I'll even say in it, did you do the last action? If not, stop reading right now, go back and do that action. And so with it, it comes from my life, my journey of what I've gone through. Again, that which we need to learn the most, we teach. And so I teach this because I've gone through this stuff. And so, like step 1, dream big. As a kid, anything was possible. But as you grow up, society tells you to be realistic. And I love what Les Brown, a great friend, he wrote the foreword for the book. He said the problem is not that we set our goals too high and we miss them. The problem is we set them too low and we hit them. And so it's about being able to dream big again. So with this book, the reason it's called Success Left a Clue is throughout the world on stage, I'm known for giving clues out to people, golden nuggets.
Yeah.
And so all the way through, I have these clues, and just helping people out. And that's why we titled it that.
Yeah, I love it. And we'll say at the end, we'll let you tell everybody where to get the book. And there's something that you're going to give. We'll put it in the show notes. Uh, uh, I think you know my story from my TED Talk that a few years ago I had a fall and almost lost my life, but I had coming back from a brain injury. I still have double vision and starting some advanced therapy next week for that. So imagine me as an author, somebody who does all the stuff I do, which uses my cognition, and all of a sudden, yeah, there's a gut punch. My life stopped. So everything you're saying to me is what I went through. It's resilient. You have to keep thinking ahead. You have to keep positive. You have to believe in yourself. And then when you're in your darkest moments, it's the hardest. The one,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I was just gonna say, and believing in yourself, that's why it's so important to surround yourself with amazing growth minded people.
exactly.
That when you're not believing in yourself, they're there to lift you up.
That's right. And I have a thread of mental health in my TED Talk, but when I had the injury, I slipped the first 3 months, I slipped into depression. I talk about it openly, and I want to just you to allow me to do that for a minute because it's part of my life that I've never experienced things like thoughts of wanting to take myself out, etc. And the funny thing about what you said is about being around like-minded, successful people is when I was in depression, I literally ruminated for a year at home, and I didn't have like-minded people. I didn't know who to call. I'll tell you why.
Yes.
Because all those people I grew up with as CEOs, executives, people like you, and I'm not putting you in this category now that I know your truth, they're egocentric. In other words,
Mm.
I grew up in a world where everybody had a title. When you were introduced, it's like, so-and-so, the CEO of this company. And you kind of they're not bad people. You just learn that it's about significance, as Tony Robbins calls it. It's about the stuff. And
Yep.
I basically I fell down and my life stopped, and I ended up night stalking at Costco for a couple of years and doing some things, just going back to the ground floor where I really didn't spend a lot of time. And I realized through my faith that happiness for me now is really not about a lot of money. It's not about see every time I set the bar for higher, higher, higher. I it's about what do I what do I what do I need versus what I want. And I changed my life that way. And now I have abundance in my life. I'm not bragging. I'm like you that way, that I do have abundance. But when I started shedding all the stuff and the significance and the pressure, life became incredible. Last thing I want to
Yeah.
say on that is when I was in my early career, I was a banker, so I was a lender. And I used to have lawyers, doctors, airplane pilots come in to borrow money. Dude, at the age of 55, 60, I would see the loan applications, which at the time we had to write by hand. And these,
Not to age ourselves.
not to age ourselves. I'm about as young as you are. But what I saw was highly leveraged people who had homes and things, but they were as much debt. And literally the pressure of
Yes.
life to pay the bills is what creates. And I say mental health is like a 1 ton truck. Our brains are created to handle 1 ton, but when you have pressure buildup from all these things of career and family, it gets to 5 tons, and it's not a matter of uh, if, it's a matter of when the gasket blows, truck doesn't work.
Yes.
And that's what happened to my brain. So here's the thing I want to tell you about my truth. Well, when I applied for my TED Talk, I did a talk on this on my podcast. This is why I love you and your story. When I did my audition, I was shortlisted, but I didn't get the final gig. And so I went back and I got a coach who was part of this. And she said, well, and I couldn't say this before openly, but I'll tell you because I trust you now that I know you. I said, well, she said, in the first minute, they didn't like you. And I was just like another gut punch. And the funny thing is, Robert, I had heard that before in my life when I was a CEO. Tom, you're a bit arrogant, you're a bit insensitive. It's about you and your agenda, because it was always about my goals and achieving. And she said in a TED Talk, the audience doesn't care about your book. It doesn't care about your home and your lifestyle. They don't care about that because the majority of the planet don't have that. They want to know,
Yeah.
how are you like them? And that's the thing that I'm learned, and I'll get your book. I'm going to read it and give you a review. I want everybody to take away from this conversation that I learned, that you taught me, is if we can shed that ego, and if we can go on stage and not talk about, or whoever we're with in our lives, not talk about how great we are. That's not what it's about. It's like, how are you serving other people to help them find true joy and happiness? And man, today I live a completely different life. I used to wear a suit. Now I wear a black tee, a leather jacket. It's because this is who I am. So thank you for giving us that success left clues and your story, because everybody's a teaching moment. Robert today lives the life of who he really is, not who he was pretending to be. Thanks for letting me ramble. I'm going to give it back to you with really last thoughts you want to leave everybody with. Where can they get your book? And then I'm going to honor you as we wrap up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I believe, as I think I said earlier, one of the greatest gifts that anybody can give this world is to be themselves. Show up for who you are. Because when you do, one of two things is going to happen. People are either going to like you or they're not. And if they like you for who you are, that's awesome. That's awesome. If they don't like you for who you are, that's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. Because, and this is coming from a people pleaser, like a world champion people pleaser. I look back at how much time I spent trying to be someone else to please other people. And
Yeah.
the moment I learned to just be me, and I'm always blown away, Tom, by the amazing people that are drawn to my energy. And my mind still goes, because here's that self-doubt. It's like, why are they attracted to my energy? Why are they interested in me? Because my mind still goes through that. And I'll tell you, humbling, if I can share one last story on it, is when I started training, I was living my passion, but I overlived it to a point where after 4.5 years, I got burnt out. And I was only at home on average 2 days a month. I got burnt out and I didn't take care of myself on stage. I herniated a disc and I decided to take a year off, but that year turned into 3.5 years.
Wow.
And I went through 2 back surgeries, and there's nothing more humbling when someone else has got to wipe your backside because you can't.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's weeks in bed not being able to move. And when I went to come out of retirement, because I knew it was my gift, I had to get back training. the self-doubt crushed.
Yeah.
And thank God for my wife, because she's like, she knows something's, I was getting ready for my first training and I'm prepping, and she goes, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "Nothing." And she's like, "Bullshit, what's going on?" I'm like, what if I don't have it anymore? And she looks at me, she's like, "Are you done with that?" I'm like, "What do you mean am I done with that? What if I don't?" She goes, "Stop. First of all, when you hop on that stage, it's going to be like you hadn't left. Why are you even doubting yourself?" And I'm like, "It's been 3 years since I've done a training. I haven't done a training. What if I don't?" And thank God she held my feet to the fire and said, "Just get up there, trust in me." And of course, she was right. The moment I stepped on stage, I was like, that self doubt went away. I'm like, why was I worried? But that's the process I put myself through all the time on things.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I think about all the single moms out there, and or single parents, and just anybody who's had a major setback. I call it the gut punches. That's really the feeling. And it's interesting because when you told that story, those are the moments when you appear even more real. To me, at this moment, telling that story, I didn't know that part of your story, but it makes everybody think about. It makes me think about when I fell and got concussed and my life stopped. And I had those same doubts. I might as well tell you now that you tell the story. My brain went that way, that I would, last year, I started back up again with I do executive coaching. I have to do it by Zoom. And so that's an hour in Zoom with somebody, right? And I
Yep.
remember talking to my psychiatrist because I had to get one to get through. And I always say this: get a checkup from the neck up, and in your care team, you need to have a coach or you need to have a mentor, but you should have a psychiatrist or psychologist because those are hard to find, right? Because you want to care for a brain and preventive. So I said to my doc, Dr. Ron, I said, I said, before, I don't know why, but this morning I woke up and true story, I called one of my clients and I canceled and I made an excuse and I just canceled the Zoom, and I felt really guilty after. And so I reset it, but I didn't have anything else to do that day. And what it was I said to Dr. Ron when I processed, I said, whatever it is in my gut, there's just wired in me. There's this thing that didn't allow me to go on that. And yet, if I push through it and go on it, I'm really good. People tell me that, Tom, like I'm
Right.
helping people. And that's what we're talking about here, is that same old self-doubt, that same old wiring in my pathways, my thoughts will come up anytime in my life. It's a lifelong journey. That's why everybody, you need to get Robert's book, Success Left a Clue. You need to check out his training and things. If you need somebody to help you, because we have to work all the time, right? It's not just I'll read his
Oh,
book, do his
constant
workbook.
journey.
No, it's constant.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way,
Yeah.
when your brain's wired a certain way, it's going to go back to that all the time. You have to just continue to overcome, right? Amazing, man. I want to take a
Yeah.
moment now. When I write down these things as I'm talking to you, these are 4 words, leadership words, I want to honor you with. The first one is resilience. You are resilience. And we took a look at your story. Everybody go back, listen to it, all the things you've overcome and how you're sharing. Number 2 is love. Now that I got to know you more, there's love coming out of you, man. You're breathing love and life into the world and other people. When I know how much you struggle, yet you're getting on a stage or in a room to teach, that's what it is. So it's a blessing. Wisdom is the other one. The wisdom from uh, things like being owner of a franchise, being in debt, becoming financially free, dealing with family challenges, dealing with shyness. There's a lot of wisdom in Robert. And the last one, I guess. I guess the last one I'll say is hope. That here you are telling us about how your COVID business, the impact on COVID on your business, and then you're doing something now. You can't see the staircase, I guess. You just see the first step. So
Yep.
you're giving us hope. So now we get to give you an award. I don't know if I told you about this. You might know about it, but I'm going to full screen myself for a moment. And there on the screen behind me is this. It's called a challenge coin. There's an image there of a guy looks a little bit like me. That's when he had hair. Robert,
Hair today, gone tomorrow.
oh yeah, nice. When I started the show a few years ago, it was really just to bring people to tell their stories, but really the tough learnings, and build a tribe. And so I created this award. It's a challenge coin, which originated in World War II, this concept. And today they're used by first responders. My dad was in AA for most of his life before he passed. Alcoholics Anonymous, they use challenge coins. Soldiers would carry them in their pockets to commit community to each other, to be there. If you didn't have yours, maybe you bought dinner or drinks or something. By receiving this coin, you commit to continuing to live with the purpose you have, continuing to take action and create the life you desire, but also in service to others. So you're now inducted into the Quiet Warrior Tribe. This coin, they're beautiful, minted, handcrafted, and painted. This coin will be coming to you. Less than 50 a year go out. I think we have them now in over 15 countries. So just when you hold it, know that they're very exclusive, that the people carrying them are a lot like us, and we're all connected by holding that. So welcome to the tribe.
Oh, thank you, Tom. I totally appreciate that. Look forward to receiving it.
All right. And I'm going to make a commitment online here, everybody, to do a review for Robert's book. I'll be posting it for you online. Everybody, authors work, we don't get known until people read our books and post reviews. So get Robert's book. Hold it up again there, Robert.
This is it right here. And yeah, one of the things that you had asked me and I didn't get a chance to mention is that because people, first of all, I feel honored that you were gracious enough to have me on your podcast, because to me, time is one of the most precious commodities. And then the fact that your listeners are watching or listening to this, their time, I honor how valuable it is I'd love for everybody that's listening to be able to actually get the digital version of the book as our gift to them for taking their time. And that's with what you have on the banner on the bottom. They just go to robertriopel.com, my name. They'll actually be able to download the full version. But don't just read it. Do the work in it, because I promise if you do the action steps, watch what happens for your life.
Fantastic. Thanks. And we'll put that in the show notes. So thanks again. And we'll probably have you back again to teach us how to build a PP app or something, something like that. All right.
I love it.
All right.
Excellent.
Hey, thanks again, Robert. It's been great to have you on the show. We'll talk to you again for sure.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, everybody, live that life with true purpose, like you hear from Robert. Find your passion, take action, and live the life that you deserve and desire.